Hi, Mike Connell with Orcas Island Leather Goods here, and today we're going to assemble our classic Islander bag. If this is your first project with us, please be sure to watch our How to Saddle Stitch video. In your kit, you will find 8 pieces of leather. The main piece of bridle leather for the bag, the outside pocket, the inside pocket that is wider at the top than at the bottom, 2 gussets, 2 billets, and a key loop strap. Our first step will be to add the billets to the gussets. Then we'll flip that over and add the key ring loop. Then we'll add the inside and outside pockets. The outside pocket will have the O embossed on it, and the inside pocket will have the top be slightly wider than the bottom of the pocket. After the pockets are installed, we'll stitch the gussets into the main body of the bag and finish it up. We'll start by stitching the billets, and you will be stitching through 2 layers of leather on the billet and 1 layer of leather for the gusset. I start by passing 1 needle through all 3 layers, evening out the threads, and then saddle stitching all the way around back to the beginning and then back stitching. Now that we've saddle stitched all the way around and back stitched, it's time to clip those threads off about 1/8 of an inch long and melt and press the ends. Take the gusset with 4 holes under the billet and we'll add the keychain loop to the inside of the gusset. To ensure you don't install this backwards, make sure the good side of the leather is showing when the key loop is snapped closed. Pass your needle through both layers of leather and then stitch around in that small 4-hole circle and backstitch. When you're done, clip off your threads, melt the ends, and go ahead and set those gussets aside until we're ready for them. The inside and outside pockets are added at the same time. Take the outside pocket with the O, line it up on the outside of the bag, and do the same with the inside pocket. We're going to begin with a long stitch line at the bottom and then do the 2 sides. So take your needle and starting in the corner, go through the outside pocket, the main piece of leather, and the corner of the inside pocket. Even out those thread lengths, and then begin saddle stitching down the long stitch line at the bottom of both pockets. When you get to the end, backstitch 2.5 stitches, clip your threads, and melt the ends. You'll see I used a pair of pliers to help pull those needles through on the backstitching. Now let's thread our needles and do each of the short sides of the pockets. We'll start by going through the top hole of the outside pocket, the main piece of leather, and the top hole of the inside pocket. You'll notice that there's a small half hole above that, and we're going to backstitch essentially 1 stitch to lock in the top of that pocket, and then stitch all the way down the side to the bottom stitch line. You'll need to make sure to pull that inside pocket into the stitch line and keep it aligned for the first few stitch holes. That extra width at the top allows the pocket to be more open on the inside of the bag. Now that we've gone to the corner, backstitch 2.5 stitches, we'll clip those threads, melt the ends, and press them into the stitch line. We'll do the same on the other side and finish up the pockets. Again, we'll start with the 3 holes that line up at the top of the pockets. 1 stitch up to the half hole, make sure to pull that nice and tight, and then stitch down to the bottom stitch line. You'll see the inside pocket begin to take its shape. Now that we've finished the stitch line, clip the threads, melt the ends, and then we'll add the gussets. The gussets are added to the outside of the main piece of bridle leather. Be sure not to cover the half hole on the main bridle piece. Start by passing 1 needle through the top hole on the gusset, and then through the main bag leather. Even out the threads. Line up the stitching holes, and again we're going to do 1 stitch into that little half hole to hold down the top of the gusset, and then stitch the length of the gusset down to where the gusset begins to turn. Your project should now look like this, and we're going to begin the turn of the gusset. Work slowly through here, ensuring that your stitching holes are lining up. If you find it easier to go through 1 stitching hole at a time, that works as well. Pull each stitch tight, and then move on to the next. For things like gussets, I often find it's easier to have a clip to hold the 2 pieces in place while I'm stitching. Here I'm using a little rubber coated clip to hold those 2 ends to make the gusset easier to line up. This part can certainly be a little tricky. Your backside needle is now on the inside of the bag, and you need to be extra careful to keep the stitching holes lined up. This is also where passing the needle through each layer of leather independently is helpful. Since the 2 layers of leather will be slightly separated, be sure to pull each stitch tight while making sure the previous couple of stitches are also tight. It's easy to skip a hole in the main piece of leather, so be sure to check on the inside of the bag every couple of stitches. If you do find a skipped hole, just pull out the stitches back to that point and restitch. Now that we've finished the turn of the gusset, we just need to stitch straight to the end. We're going to do a loop over the top, back stitch, and finish up this side. We're going to do a full stitch into that last stitching hole, and then we're going to take our threads, loop over the top, and come back through that last stitching hole, creating a loop over the top. That needle on the front side looped over from the back through to the front. We're going to do the same thing with the back needle, loop over through the front and back to reinforce that top stitch. And now we'll back stitch, clip those threads, and melt them into the stitch line. Since we want the outside of the bag to look nice, we'll melt those threads on the inside of the bag. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side. Line up that gusset and make sure that you leave the little half hole uncovered, because we'll stitch back into that and then forward down the stitch line to the turn of the gusset. Now that we've stitched the gusset in, we're going to do the same loop stitch over the top. Take that front side needle, loop over, come in through the back, make sure that loop is straight in line with the stitch line. Now we'll do the same with the back side needle, loop across to the front, and back through. 2.5 saddle stitches, and we're finished up with this bag. All that's left is to burnish your edges if you'd like, so check out our edge finishing video. Now let's assemble the strap. If you want to burnish the edges with water and the wax canvas, you'll want to do that before assembling. The strap consists of a long strap, a short strap, 2 connector pieces, the buckle, and the optional detachable clasps. The first thing we'll do is attach the buckle to the short section of the strap. The buckle is designed to close in this direction, so take the end of the short strap with the rectangular cutout, and the good side of the leather will be facing up, and pass it through the end of the buckle just far enough to put the tongue of the buckle through the rectangular cutout. Fold the end of the strap over the center bar and line up the stitching holes. Then stitch around the stitch line and back stitch to attach the buckle. When you're done, it will look like this. Now let's attach the short strap to your bag. Pass the connector piece halfway through the metal loop on the bag, and then fold the connector together and the strap goes between the 2 pieces. You need to make sure that you have the good side of your leather facing out on the bag, the connector, and the strap. All the stitching holes will line up, and you will need to stitch all the way around the stitch line and backstitch. Here's how your bag will look with the strap attached. If you are using the optional detachable clasps, you will simply attach the strap connector to the clasp instead of the bag. Pass the connector through the loop on the clasp so the strap can go between the 2 ends of the connector piece. Line up the stitching holes and stitch around. The clasp then simply attaches to the bag by clipping it on the loop. Lastly, we'll attach the long section of the strap to the other side of the bag, just as we did the first. Again, ensuring the good side of the leather is facing out on the bag, the connector, and the strap piece. Once both ends of the straps are attached to the bag, pass the long strap through the buckle and adjust to your desired length. If you have any questions, we're here to help, so don't hesitate to reach out. Our Facebook support page is a great place to find community and quick answers. We love to see what you're making, so please be sure to tag us on social media. Thank you so much for watching. From our family to yours, happy making.